And we are pleased to go to the hotline right now and visit with a man who had a tremendous career at the University of Arkansas, went on to a great career in the NFL, including 12 years with the Buffalo Bills. Also did some time coaching. He's a member of the U of A Sports Hall of Honor and the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame. Joe Ferguson is our guest here on Ruskin and Zach. Good afternoon, sir. How you doing?
Everything's good. Can't complain.
Good deal. We appreciate you stopping by. The first thing I wanted to ask you were coaching at Arkansas as Clint Stoerner was toppling a lot of your quarterbacking records. What was that like back in the late 90s?
Well, I coached him too good, I guess. He's a great player, great competitor, and deserves all the honors that he got. He was easy to coach because he wanted to play and enjoyed the game, and the team loved him. That team, his senior year was a great united team, and they accomplished a lot that year.
Joe, I want to ask you, because you are in a unique position to understand what a guy like KJ Jefferson is going through. KJ's 19, 20 years old, and in every corner of this state, he can go to a gas station to get gas, and people know who he is. You've been there. You've experienced that, where everybody knows who you are. They know what you look like. And what is that like for a 19, 20, 21-year-old kid to have that sort of pressure thrust upon him when really, last year he was sort of the backup. Nobody knew who he was.
Well, a lot of people know who the backup guy is, even though he's in the limelight right now, and it does put pressure on you. There's no doubt about it. He'll be in a situation where people will be judging him in a hurry. That first ball game with Rice is going to be very interesting. The second game with Texas will be even more so. He's in a situation where he needs to respond, but I think he can because he's going to have a good football team around him. Every quarterback needs a good football team, and Coach Enos is great experience in calling plays for his players. And so I don't think they'll put him in a lot of situations too early where he can fail. Hopefully they won't, but he is a great athlete, and he will make some things happen.
And another thing that, of course, you can provide some insight on, Joe, is when you take over as the starter and winning the locker room and being there as the leader, de facto or not, you are the leader of the team. How do you go about winning people over that maybe thought otherwise inside your own locker room?
You just when you perform on the field makes all the difference in the world. How you perform at practice and what you do at practice. The players are all watching. But just being yourself and trying not to be something you're not in the locker room, and be part of the guys, the camaraderie that goes on. I tell you, the locker room is so important for players, especially young players, because that's where you get to know everybody. The traveling and the things that you do together there, that's where you learn about each other. Just be yourself. I mean, don't try to be something you're not. And as everybody can see, he works extremely hard at practice, and that's where players learn. I mean, they learn about each other right there in those two situations.
As the quarterback, and you're coming in your first year as a starter, and you've got to compartmentalize so many things because there's so many things coming at you. As the first time you step onto the practice field, what's priority number one? Is it the playbook? Is it the relationships with the player? Your offensive line, your receivers? Is it just an overall understanding of the game? When you step into the huddle for the first time, what's priority one?
Priority one is to let them know that you know what you're doing. You can't go in there and make a lot of mistakes and gain their confidence, especially the offensive linemen. Those offensive line guys are a bunch of guys that hang together. They love each other because they have to play together so much, and they're the guys you need to win over. It's not the receivers, not the running backs. Those are the guys that you need to. They need to have confidence in you that they know that you know what you're doing. So those are the guys you have to win over. The rest of them will come along.
We're talking with Joe Ferguson here on Ruskin and Zach. I was looking at some of the time. You want to talk about people a lot of times talk about in Green Bay going from Favre to Aaron Rodgers and how they've been blessed. There was a little bit of time in between, but Buffalo basically went from you to Jim Kelly for 20 some odd years as the quarterback. That's a pretty good run there for Bills fans.
Bills fans treated everybody so good. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were days when we weren't winning and we weren't a very good football team that you got treated kind of rough. But we had a good run when I was there. Jim Kelly had a great run. I wish they would have won one of those Super Bowls, but or all of them naturally. But they had a great run there, and they've got a great quarterback in hand right now. And they're going to be a challenge this year to beat. I think I can't hardly wait to watch them again this year.
I have definitively many times on this show said you were the best quarterback to ever come out of the University of Arkansas, and I've got people texting me saying, preach it. But I want to ask you a little bit about sort of the way the game has evolved from the time you went into the league. I mean, you were playing behind the Electric Company, which is the offensive line that you had in front of you, to the late 80s when you saw teams like the San Diego Chargers, the Air Coryell. You saw the game sort of evolving into a passing game. How much would you have enjoyed playing in today's game where they basically can't touch the quarterback?
I tell you, today's game is so different than what we played in. If we would have thrown the football 25 times a game, that was a bunch. And in the NFL today, if you're not throwing 45 to 60, some couple of teams have thrown it 70 times in a game. That's truly amazing right there. I would love to be playing in today's game for two reasons, because we'd be throwing the ball more and be making a heck of a lot more money. That's for sure. But the game today is fun to watch, and it has revolved down into the college levels, and which almost everybody in the country now is throwing the football or running the option out of the shotgun formation, and it's fun to watch, even though every channel you turn to a different game, and it looks exactly the same now because everybody's doing the same thing.
Now, you say that teams today are throwing it 40, 50, 60 times, but I mean, the offense that you ran under Coach Broyles was pretty advanced for its time. I mean, you guys threw the ball as much as anybody.
Well, we did at that time. That's why I came to the University of Arkansas. I had narrowed it down to 5 schools, and that were throwing the football at that time, and so Arkansas was my choice, and we did throw it as much as anybody in the country at that time, and we had a coach named Don Broyles, who was our offensive coordinator. He was a little bit more advanced than most people in the passing game, and but we had receivers and we had running backs and we had a great offensive line. So we needed to throw it more, to be perfectly honest with you.
When you look at Razorback football now, as Sam Pittman tries to bring it back to some national relevance, what are your thoughts watching the program now and watching as they try and turn this thing around?
The words that I hear, and I have heard Coach Pittman speak a couple of times, very impressive speaker. He's about himself, and the players see that. And from what I understand, in practice, he treats them great. They're not going to be spoiled, but they're not going to be undisciplined. And I think the players really, really like Coach Pittman, and that makes all the difference in the world. They're going to play hard, and I think just by doing that this year, they're going to win several games. I think they're going to surprise some people as they did last year. But I tell you, the quarterback position is so important. A young guy, it's going to be tough. But like I said, Coach Enos is going to put him in situations where he can play.
I want to ask you a little bit because we don't get a lot of insight into what it was like to play for Frank Broyles. I mean, when you arrived on campus, he was established as one of the better coaches in the country, one of the top coaches in the country. And what was, obviously you said that, you came here because Arkansas threw the football, but what was your relationship like with him? And as you became the starter and you were the guy, what was that relationship with him like?
Coach Broyles was so far advanced than most coaches in the country at that point. He was such a leader of coaches. He knew he had to hire great coaches to win in the Southwest Conference at that time, and that's what he did. We had a coaching staff that was advanced over many other teams for sure. So he was a great organizer, not so much a hands-on type coach, but you knew when you saw Coach Broyles, he was thinking about not necessarily this day or this hour, but he's thinking, 2 months down the road, what's going to happen there and what can we do to get ready for that? So he was a great head coach, a great organizer, but he let his coaches coach. That's one thing I liked about him.
And we're talking with Joe Ferguson here on Ruskin and Zach. It's interesting to hear you say that because I think that same recipe still works over there. If you look at who's having success in the various sports programs at the U of A, organized, attention to detail, great staffs around them. It's the same recipe as it was in Frank Broyles' day at Arkansas as it is in 2021.
No doubt, and I think that's going to be the winning programs are going to be that way. You got to share the load. One guy can't do it all, that's for sure. And there's been several coaches try to do that, not that successful. And Coach Pittman knows he's got to have great coaches, which he does have, and he's getting better and better with the players. Like I said earlier, the big part I see is that the players are having fun and they enjoy playing, and they will play hard every week.
I got to ask you about the time that you're a Shreveport, Louisiana native, and in the time in which you were in high school and then making your college decision. I mean, the Shreveport area was producing great quarterbacks. Terry Bradshaw came out of Louisiana Tech. You came out of that area. Did you grow up throwing the football, or was this something that sort of evolved once you got to the college level?
Terry and Bradshaw and I played at the same high school. He was 3 years ahead of me. We were in a system there where we were throwing the football and nobody else was. So teams were having trouble defensing us. We were a little bit more advanced in the passing game than anybody else, and so it paid off for us. But we were very fortunate to have some great receivers and Jim Hodge and Mark Hollingsworth and Mike Rapon, and we were ahead of the game. I mean, and in the high school level, and we had coaches that didn't mind experimenting with those things.
Joe Ferguson's our guest here. Who do you you mentioned Josh Allen's going to be on this list, I'm sure, but who do you enjoy watching today? When you turn on a football game or you're seeing who's playing, who do you enjoy watch to play the position?
I really enjoyed watching the Bills play the last couple of years because of their quarterback and because they are a good football team, and they're going to be challenging again this year. I tell you, I enjoy watching. A lot of people don't want to hear this, but I love watching Tom Brady more than anybody else. I like watching Aaron Rodgers for the Green Bay Packers. I hope they get their situation straightened out up there with him. But I'm a true drop-back passing kind of guy. I love watching that. And so far in the NFL, that type quarterback has been the winning more Super Bowls than anybody else. But that seems to be changing to the running type quarterback that can still throw the football some.
Is there a game when you're sitting in your living room and you just say, you know what, I was good that day when you were at the University of Arkansas? Like I was pretty good that day. And then is there a game where you look at it and like, man, I'd like another shot at those guys?
I'm having trouble remembering yesterday, much less remembering all the way back to that. So there were games where it come back, and Texas games were so big back then for us at Arkansas. And when we did beat Texas, it was such a great relief for the players, the coaches, and the fans when we beat them in Little Rock that year. And that was the big game every year. But as far as remembering every game, I don't. Now, there's some players that can tell you every play they ever played, but I can't do that for some reason.
And Joe, it seems like players I've run across, they remember every blade of grass detail about the losses more than they do the wins from time to time. It's interesting how that sometimes is the case.
Well, the losses have a more of an effect, but especially big games that you need. You have to win. Every loss is a big game, but there are bigger games that you lose that you definitely can look back and say, well, I wish we had another shot at that, or what could we have done different, or whatever. But you didn't win it that day, and you do think about those things at times.
Yeah. Well, this has been a treat. We really enjoyed the conversation. Hope we get to do it again sometime. Joe, thank you so much for taking time for us today.
Thanks for the call, and anytime. That'll be good.
All right, that's Joe Ferguson with us here. Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame member, U of A Sports Hall of Honor, with us here on Ruskin and Zach, and the best quarterback to ever come out of that school.
Period.
Full stop.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's if you're not familiar with his career, Go look him up. I was as we were doing that.
He tried to come back in the 90s in the CFL. He did play for one of his former coaches in Buffalo for a brief time there.
He was really good in the NFL. The Bills sort of arced in the early 70s, and then in the late 70s, they were really, really good.
Let me walk through this.
Yeah.
Let me walk through this. In high school, it went Terry Bradshaw to Joe Ferguson.
That's good.
And then in Buffalo, it basically went from Joe Ferguson to Jim Kelly.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
And who followed him at Arkansas? Mid-70s, right?
Yeah, he was out in
early
72. So, gosh, I'm going to have to look it up now. See,
yeah, I've got the media guide here on my computer because they don't print them anymore.
If you're not familiar with his career, I mean, really, look him up. I mean, he was a really good pro quarterback, and then his time at Arkansas, he came in at a very weird time because it was the year after he was in the recruiting class, the year after the shootout, I believe, and then he was there from 71 to 72. He was the guy at Arkansas, and he was just. I mean, he's the best they've ever had.